Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Perth and Kinross Licensing Board of Thursday, the 27th of January 2022. Can I ask members who are not speaking to please make sure that their microphones are on mute and to use the chat function if they wish to ask a question. To let everyone know this meeting is being recorded. I'd like to introduce the members present this morning. As I've said, I'm Councillor Kathleen Baird. We have with us Councillor Ian James, Councillor Brock, Councillor Gray, Councillor Pover, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Reid, Councillor Duff, Councillor Parrott, and apologies from Councillor McCall. We have with us this morning Colin Elliott, Deputy Clerk. Can I ask members, are there anyone got any declarations of interest?
No.
Thank you. Can we agree the minute of the meeting of the 9th of December 2021?
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. We now come to the first item of business. It's the Tmost Marina Hotel. And with us we have Stephen McGowan and Darren Scott. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Marina. I'll just introduce myself for those of you who might not remember me, because it's been some time since I've been up at the Perth board. It's nice to see you, although I do hope to see you in the real world at some point again soon. My name's Stephen McGowan, and I'm with Darren Scott, who's also, as you can see on screen, and he's the General Manager of Tmost Marina. I'll be happy to make my submissions when you're ready, Convener. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is the premises licence application for the Tmost Marina Hotel, Kenmore. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application? Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Convener. Of course, you now know who's present for the applicants. As Convener has said, this is a full premises licence application for what is a holiday complex. Now, the site has a licensing history, which I'm sure Mr. McGowan will explain if need be, but the Tmost Marina restaurant has a premises licence. The main building was burnt to the ground a number of years ago. That premises licence continued in a small way to be used for a shack, which was at the side, and an outdoor area as a temporary measure. Also, there was a temporary premises licence that you as a board granted just over 4 years ago, I think, for another building that's now called the Ferryman's Inn. That's away over to the left-hand side, that within the wider site, to allow the business to continue having the fire to the main building, having suffered the fire to the main building. Now, the premises application now seeks to basically regularise the situation to licence a wider site, including the Ferryman's Inn, other buildings including a hot box spa, and outdoor areas, one of which can accommodate a marquee for weddings and functions. And what is sought would effectively replace the existing licences. Now, technical thing, but to avoid double licensing, if you grant this application, all the other remaining premises licence applications should be surrendered by the applicant before this licence is issued. Now, Section 50 certificates are in place for planning, building standards and food hygiene. Police Scotland have advised the applicant does not have any relevant offences. Police have confirmed there are no cases, complaints and representations within 1 year concerning antisocial behaviour on the premises or within a 50-metre radius of the premises. With functions being sought, all the late night conditions apply. Now, deliveries of alcohol are sought, albeit the deliveries are mainly to accommodation units across the road, across the kind of main road. Strictly speaking, the board's policy 5.22 on the delivery of alcohol into consumption by persons under 18 or drunk persons is relevant, and you have a copy of that in your papers. But it's a matter for you whether you consider it necessary or expedient to impose a local condition of a licence, if granted, to reflect that policy. Just to be clear, it's not, my understanding is not intended that there be delivery to the public by way of couriers, etc. It's about delivery to those staying within the wider complex. Now, a copy of the proposed location plan and proposed layout plan are before you. Admittedly, the layout plan isn't easy to read at A4 scale, but you can size it up if you're able to. And the last comment I would make is that no objections have been received to the application. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Can I now invite Mr. McGowan to speak to the application? Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning again, everyone. Mr. Elliott's very quick narration of the background there is extremely helpful. It very much sets the scene for why the application comes before you now. I think the hearing today is a bit of a culmination of a long saga, beginning, of course, with the fire a number of years ago, and the licensed premises was essentially destroyed, although thankfully no one was injured. Since that time, Your Honours, my clients have been supported by you, by this board, as Mr Elliott has said, in allowing a variety of temporary licensing arrangements to ensure that basically the business could survive. Initially after the fire, but then of course the issues that were exacerbated by the onset of the pandemic as well. So we've got in place a fairly unique situation with a number of temporary licensing arrangements, which Your Honours have been good enough to support us with. And my client also wants to put on record that they're extremely helpful, extremely grateful, I should say, for the help that's been given behind the scenes in respect of licensing arrangements for their premises, from Your Honours Clerk's office, from Shona, but also from Louise Cormack and others. And they wanted me to say that, to get that on record, because there's been a lot of support from the officers behind the scenes on this journey. So what we're doing today, Your Honours, is essentially to modernise the licensing arrangements, put everything under one licence so that it's nice and clean and nice and easy, and that would hopefully make life easier for all concerned, including the officers and the regulators as well as the operators. So that's what's before you today. It's a provisional premises licence application to bring all the different aspects under the one licence. And as Mr Elliott says, that will allow, hoping Your Honours are with us today, the temporary arrangements to fall away, and for my clients to draw a line under all of the obstacles they've had to overcome to get to this point and move forward for what I very much hope for them will be a prosperous 2022. Your Honours might be interested to know that in general terms, they've spent a six-figure sum on upgrading this premises, and it really is a fantastic, remarkable looking premises now. And the result of that is that they also support 50 jobs, people who live in the local area and slightly further afield, but you know, in the local area. And what a fantastic thing that is for them and for the area. In terms of the technicalities, just to pick up on one or two things that Mr Elliott mentioned, for the record, happy to agree to the conditions, no issues with any of that. In relation to the home delivery policy, again, Mr Elliott's identified, because of the unique nature of this premises, it's not a convenience store. It's a small, modest facility, really designed principally to allow residents in the wider resort to take advantage of being able to have a bottle of wine and take it back to their townhouse or their flat. So if Your Honours wish a bespoke policy, then we will be happy to agree a condition on that basis, and I will draft the policy for the client to make sure it accords with your Honours policy and with the wider requirements under the 2005 Act. So if you wish it, no pushback from us on that, Your Honours, we're happy to agree to that. And finally, just for the record, I should say, happy to agree with Mr Elliott's recommendation that the other previous licences are all surrendered, and Mr Elliott and I am sure can sort that out in writing offline after the hearing today, assuming of course that Your Honours are with us on the application. So I suppose just a final remark from me, Your Honours, although you know I'm always happy to take any questions, but since the fire and since going through the pandemic, this premises has really transformed itself. It is a wonderful luxury spa resort, a fantastic place for tourism in the local area and for Perth and Tmost generally. It has had a long road to recovery, but the future's bright. They've got a fantastic GM with Darren, who's been looking after the premises over this period, and I commend the application to you. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr McGowan, and also thank you for the kind words to the licensing board team, because quite often we all know they work very hard, but it's not, sometimes never said in public, so I'm sure they'll be delighted for your acknowledgement. Councillor Wilson, you have a question.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Mr McGowan, for your presentation. There's been a lot done here. What are the disability access facilities in the new premises?
So we have submitted with the application, Your Honours, a full disability statement. That should be amongst your papers. I'm just going to quickly have a virtual nod to Mr. Elliott, because I don't want to assume that. Mr. Elliott, could you confirm that?
No, for good reason we don't produce that to members, because as you know, once you produced it, there's no role for the members in that. In terms of the requirement is just simply to produce it, there's no decision making by the members on that. But just run through it if you just want to advise them what facilities are there for disabled persons. Aye,
sure, no problem at all. Just give me one moment till I call it up on my screen. I don't have it to hand. Just give me 2 seconds. So the brief answer, whilst I call this document up in front of me, is that yes, we have a full disabled access statement. It talks about a number of different aspects to the disabled facilities, which include accessible toilets, which include flatted facilities to allow for wheelchair access. And I believe I might lean slightly on Darren here a wee bit, but I believe there may also be some additional facilities which are not specifically listed. So I think rather than me reading you a whole statement, perhaps Darren, if you could just jump in, and if there's any specific facilities that you would like to mention for Councillor Wilson, please do so.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, we've got we've improved all the access routes around the resort prior to this application, so that the pathways are now all fully accessible to both sides of the resort, so down to the main spa and restaurant and garden area, and also with a fully accessed pathway looping round on the other side of the resort where the Marina and Marina Shack sit on the drawings, of which there's newly upgraded disabled toilets as well at the main block by the opposite the spa and by the restaurant there as well. And just in terms of use around the resort, the garden, etc., has all been brought under kind of a more cohesive policy throughout the resort for disabled access as well. So everything is kind of been improved infrastructural wise to allow full access.
I feel the comprehensive.
I'm happy with that answer.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. One thing, just one thing to add. It was a fairly comprehensive answer from Darren there. The one thing he didn't mention, which is in the disability statement, is that assistance dogs are welcome for those who have vision difficulties. So just to put that on the record, it's a dog-friendly premises as well. If you care to go and visit and stay there, you will be allowed to bring your pampered pooch with you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks. I was just interested in what the procedure for delivery of alcohol to the chalets, etc., would be if we don't apply the actual policy. What was the intention for that?
So there's a small facility within the main complex where if I was staying there with my wife, for example, and let's say I was in the Ferryman's and I'd had a nice meal and there was a particular glass of wine that I enjoyed, I might ask Darren or his staff if I could buy a bottle of that to take back to the chalet that I'm staying in. So I mean, that's really it in terms of the facility. There is a record keeping function, as you'll know, Councillor. So where there is an off sale of that nature, Darren staff are required to keep a log of that. And of course, any delivery, for example, if I am in the chalet and I phone one of Darren's staff and ask for a bottle of wine or whatever to be brought, then the usual procedures apply in respect of Challenge 25, which I expect you're looking to hear from me about. So of course that applies. If I was in one of the accommodation units and I phoned Darren and asked him to bring me some beers or a bottle of wine, then he would send one of his staff round. The records would be kept, the principal daybook in the premises, the invoice to the customer for the whatever it is that's been ordered. And if my teenage daughter happens to answer the door instead of me, then the alcohol will not be passed across. So she would have to come and raise me to go and collect the alcohol. So, and I know your honours will be struggling to believe this, but I do get challenged for 25 all the time. So yes, I mean, clearly I'm being slightly frivolous there, your honours, but of course challenge 25 will apply. And the other element that applies, just like it does for any off-sale delivery, is the drunkenness test. You know, you're not allowed to deliver alcohol to someone who's under the influence. That's a sort of black and white term on the face of the Act. So again, if it does assist your honours, I'm happy to draft a policy document that captures these things so that Darren can use that in his training of his staff, if that would be of assistance. It's something we'd be doing anyway, Councillor. So if you want it as a condition of the licence, that's fine by us, because it's the right thing to do. We'd be doing it anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't see any other councillor wishing to ask a question. No. So there are no further questions. So, Mr. McGowan, is there anything else you'd like to add before we come to a decision?
I don't think so, Convener, to be honest with you. I think your honours have all understood where we're going with this application. So I would just commend it to you and ask you to move grant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I've heard no adverse comments from the members, so I would like to propose a motion that we grant this application subject to mandatory conditions, including all late night opening conditions. And as we know, this would be a premises licence for Tmost Marina restaurant, and we agree that they would surrender the prior licences before this being issued. So do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor James.
Happy. Yep, more than happy to second your motion, Convener. Well-run facility anyway, and Mr. McGowan, very well presented. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So members happy to agree this?
Happy to agree.
Agree.
I think this is a unanimous.
Agreed.
Can I ask the deputy clerk? Sorry, Councillor Barrett.
Can we just confirm that we're not imposing with that agreement that the delivery condition?
I'm quite content with what Mr. McGowan said, that they would have their own bespoke small policy and the training that they would give their staff, rather than impose the policy of the council.
No, fine. I'm entirely happy with that as well. I just wanted it, since we've spoken about it, I just wanted it to be confirmed that we're not imposing that condition. Thank you.
Yes, we're not imposing our own policy condition.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Clerk, is there anything else you want to add?
No, Convener, the last part that Councillor Parrott raised is what I was going to clarify to make sure that everyone understood that, but that's grant subject to management conditions, including late night opening conditions, with the surrender of the other two licences to be done, and that can be done, Mr. McGowan, straight by email to Ms Douglas, and then that'll be it.
So thank you very much, and we hope you have a good season. So
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I think you are free to go, but Mr. McGowan will be staying with us because he's got some other business with us this morning.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks now. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.
Right. Okay. We now move on to the major variation applications for Sainsbury stores for Perth, Blair, and Kinross. So, Mr. McGowan, it's over to you.
I'll come in first of all, sorry.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I'm not trying to rush things. So we've got the three major variation applications for Sainsbury's stores in Perth, Blair, and Kinross, and they're for the same premises licence holder, and similar variations are proposed. So they can hear all the applications together, but we will make separate decisions on each. So can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the applications?
Thank you, Convener. For members' awareness, what we can do here is the submissions for all three can be all together. but it provided you then take separate decisions. So my comments will firstly address Sainsbury, Perth, then I'll cover Blair, Gowrie and Kinross. The reason for hearing them together is there is a commonality between them. There are similar variations to each of the existing premises licences. Now, starting with Perth, of course, the other thing is Mr McGowan is going to be addressing you on all three applications. The proposed variation for Perth primarily seeks to amend the name of the premises, amend the description of the premises, add activities, which is recorded music, and I think this is a principal cause of the variation application to add off-sale deliveries. Now, of course, members, you know, kind of said it in the last application, deliveries are sought, so policy 5.22 of your policy statement is relevant about consumption, delivery of alcohol to and consumption by persons under 18 and drunk persons, therefore relevant. Again, a matter for you, whether you consider it necessary or expedient to impose a local condition on a licence, if granted, to reflect that policy, and no objections have been received to the Perth application. Now, the Blair Gowrie application is really, I would adopt my same comments as the Perth application. The only real difference with this one is within the variation, the proposed description of the premises refers to Blair Gowrie instead of Perth. That's really the only difference. Kinross is a wee bit different. Whilst it's similar, this one reflects that the Kinross premises are a supermarket, not a Sainsbury's local in terms of the wording. Recorded music is not to be added because it's already within the premises licence. And that's really, those are the obvious differences. And convener, I've nothing really more to add on those three applications.
Thank you very much. Mr McGowan, over to you.
Thanks, convener. Yes, and I appreciate the summary from Mr Elliott. They are always very helpful. Yeah, I mean, the three applications, I'll make a single submission. You'll be delighted to hear, Your Honours. I think the last thing you'd want to hear from me is the same thing 3 times in a row. Single submission. What we've done here is we've actually lodged variations for every single Sainsbury's in the country. So it's part of this kind of wider sweep up of tidying up all of the licences to make sure that they do accurately reflect the requirements of the Act in relation to home deliveries. And as Mr Elliott identified, that really is the primary driver of the applications, to make sure that all the licences all over Scotland have got the right wording in there about the relevant sections that cover off record keeping and so on. In doing that, we've also tweaked a wee bit here and a wee bit there, like the recorded music thing. And with the Kinross application, because that's a supermarket rather than a local store, there's a slight change to the wording just to call it a supermarket essentially. So the three applications are essentially the same. It's just to tidy up the wording for home deliveries. Your Honour's home delivery conditions are perfectly acceptable. You know the applicant very well, I am sure. The applicant already has a very robust home delivery policy nationally, and I've spoken about that at virtually every licensing board in the country now, going through all of these different applications that we've put in. So I can tell you from my own experience that having read that policy out on a number of occasions at various boards, it's a very robust policy. I'm sure Your Honours would be very happy with it. So those conditions are more than acceptable to this operator. And I think that's it, Your Honours. I think you obviously know the applicant. I'm pleased to see that none of the applications have attracted any objections or any adverse reports, and simply commend them to you. But of course, as always, if you have any questions for me, I will do my level best.
Thank you very much, Mr McGowan. Councillor Duff, I think you're about to put a question in the chat box. Councillor Duff.
No, sorry, convener, not sure what gave you the impression, but no questions.
So, anyone else? Anyone got a question? No, I think you've explained it very well, and we all understand the reasoning why you're going to do this. And is there anything else you wish to add, Mr McGowan?
No, thank you, convener.
Okay, I think then that Councillor James, did you put your hand up to speak? No, sorry.
No, sorry, I just went to scratch my head. Sorry.
Okay,
you just love Teams.
We're ready to make a decision. So we have Sainsbury's Perth first. So do we agree to vary the premises licence by amending the premises licence and amending the operating plan?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
I am presuming we wish to import the delivery policy as a local condition.
Agreed.
Agreed.
So that is unanimous for Sainsbury's Perth. We now move on to Sainsbury's Blair Gowrie. And do we agree to vary the premises licence by amending the premises licence and amending the operating plan?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And we do wish to import the delivery policy as a local condition.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Now we come to Sainsbury's Kinross. Do we agree to vary the premises licence by amending the premises licence and amending the operating plan? I would imagine
Agreed.
Agreed.
agreed. And we wish
Agreed
to
with the
import
delivery.
and import the delivery policy as a local condition.
Agree.
Agreed.
Deputy Clerk, is there anything else you wish to add?
Nothing from my perspective. That's all clear. All 3 applications granted with the delivery condition on each.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. McGowan, I think you are free to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you for releasing me, convener. Best wishes to all councillors and those behind the scenes as well. And I do hope that I do get to see you in the High Street at some point in the future. All the best, everyone.
Right. Okay, then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Convener, if I could come in, we do have 2 non-cited applications, but we also have, we're just about the time for our 10:30 citation. Matter for you, you can go through the 2 non-cited, which will take a few minutes, or we can go straight to the next cited matter. People do appear to be waiting in the lobby.
Yeah, I think as they're waiting in the lobby, it might be just as well to go there now rather than in case they lose connection. So could you just refresh my memory which one we're going to next?
It's a premises licence application for B&M store,
Yes.
Royal Creef, page 55 on your papers, members.
Thank you.
If you're content, convener, if Ms Douglas could admit there's supposed to be 3 persons coming in: agent, proposed DPM and store manager.
1, 2, yep. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we have got our 3 guests here. We've got Bob, Richard Williams and Jake Robb. I am Councillor Kathleen Baird, the convener of the Licensing Board, and with us this morning we have got Councillor James, Councillor Brock, Councillor Gray, Councillor Pover, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Reid, Councillor Duff and Councillor Parrott and Deputy Clerk Colin Elliott. So
Good morning, councillors.
Good morning.
Just find my paper which I have moved. This is the premises licence application for B&M store, Broich Road, Creef. So can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application? Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, convener. Just to clarify who's present, we have Richard Williams, who is the solicitor for the applicants, Bob Sahota, if I get the pronunciation right, who is the proposed DPM for the premises, and Jake Robb, who's the store manager for the premises, as I understand it. Now, members, one objection from Creef Community Council has been received, and you have that before you in your papers. The Community Council have indicated they wish to rest on the objection, so there will be no attendance by them today. Now, this application is for a full premises licence. The applicant seek an off-sales facility 10 till 10, 7 days per week. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning and food hygiene. However, a Section 50 certificate is not in place for building standards. They commented that the building warrant for fit out has been approved, but a completion certificate has not yet been submitted. What that means, as I understand, is that there's a building warrant and even completion certificate for the building itself, but the internal fit out is the issue that still has to be resolved with building standards. Now, of course, members will know in the absence of clearance from building standards, the application will have to be downgraded to a provisional premises licence. If granted, confirmation can be dealt with under delegated powers. It doesn't come back to the board. Now, Police Scotland have advised the applicant and connected persons to not have any relevant offences. The police have confirmed that there have been 3 instances of youths causing annoyance at this premise on 8th and 9th November 2021 and 2nd December 2021. They stated that youths were congregating inside and outside the store and also causing issues at neighbouring stores. Now, members, the police provided an update very recently that what they said was 2 further calls regarding youths causing annoyance on 2nd and 17th December. I understand the applicants will address that. Now, the proposed location/layout plan is within your papers for your information. The objection from the Community Council refers to traffic in and around Broich Road. Now, to be clear, members, as you're aware, road traffic matters are generally considered to be out with the scope of the alcohol licensing objectives. The Community Council also refers to the possible impact on Creef's long-standing stores if an alcohol licence is granted to the applicant. Strictly speaking, this refers to the impact on other retail premises and is not an objection on the over-provision of licensed premises in the area. But it should be noted, members, as you know, that Perth and Ross Licensing Board does not have an over-provision policy. Where an objector does not appear, it's a matter for the board what weight to give to the objection in the absence of being able to question the objector. Thank you, Convener. That covers everything.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, it's over to you now.
Yes, good morning, councillors. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this application to you. If I can just say, first of all, I'm sorry about the building warrant. We have been chasing that on a daily basis, but unfortunately, as has already been explained by Mr. Elliott, this will have to be downgraded to a provisional premises licence, which is regrettable because the store's been open since September and they would like to start selling alcohol if you were minded to grant them the licence. But anyway, that's the position. I'm also sorry I've not had an opportunity to actually visit because of COVID, the location here. I must say, when I looked on Google Street Maps to find the location, it appeared to be a farmer's field. So a lot's obviously changed in the locality since then. I know there's an Aldi next door, which is licensed as well. So yes, things have changed considerably since, I think, 2009 when the last street map was. But I'm making the application on behalf of EV Retail. It's B&M is now a national retailer, of course. I think your closest store would be in Stirling or Alloa, not too far away. And as a general rule, when B&M open a store now, they would apply for an alcohol license. We've got here, as you've seen, if you have any practical questions, the DPM, who's actually the area manager for B&M, Mr. Sahota. He's down as the DPM on this application, and also Mr. Rob, because I know you will have some questions in terms of operation of this store, bearing in mind the issues there have been with local use. So just to outline the application for you, first of all, before I move on to the representations. As I say, B&M is a national retailer with national procedures, for example, to prevent underage sales of alcohol, as you would expect. In terms of the layout of this store, I hope you've seen the layout plan, but there are 8 bays of alcohol from 799 total bays. So in actual fact, it's a fairly modest display of alcohol. It's only 1% of the store, and it's not something you would have, for example, see in a supermarket where the range would be far greater. B&M doesn't cool any of its alcohol. It's not for immediate consumption. It's very much a complementary purchase to any other goods, whether it's food or fancy goods that they may buy at B&M. So nothing's cooled. We have a very small range of spirits. And if you were to look at the pricing of alcohol at B&M, it's certainly, obviously we bear in mind there's minimum unit pricing anyway, but it's not something that is advertised as being cheap. It's not displayed in the windows, for example. It's not advertised externally. So we would say that alcohol at B&M is very much complementary for people to be able to purchase with their goods rather than a reason to visit the store. Also, you'll see on the plan that the alcohol is being placed particularly well for supervision here. The alcohol's right near to the till sections. It will be staffed, the tills from the first till on the right hand side, so there will be good visibility over this section in case anybody were trying to purchase alcohol underage or steal any alcohol. As far as B&M's procedures are concerned, They operate Challenge 25. They have quarterly staff training and induction training. As I say, this store's already been open since September, so we have other age-restricted products, knives, glue, etc. So that training's already been established for anybody working at the store. The tills are on an EPOS system, so anything that's alcohol would be scanned at the cash desk, and the sale could not proceed unless the cashier had seen the ID and confirmed to say that they have seen that ID. If a sale is refused for any reason, then there's an electronic transaction record retained, and in fact the area manager or the DPM will go through those records on a regular basis just to establish if any till operator is not making challenges at the till, to make sure that those procedures are being implemented in practice. They have a fantastic CCTV system at all of their stores, covering all the aisles where goods are sold, and that information is available to the police on request. They maintain a an incident book for any incidents that happen in the store. And just one final thing here, I don't think we put it on the application, but I did ask the area manager the other day. The standard would be that for more expensive items, such as spirits, that they would hard tag spirit bottles. They'd be placed high on the shelves anyway, so they were not particularly accessible, but hard tags would be placed on the spirit bottles so people couldn't just walk out with spirits. It's generally not effective to do that for the beer and wine, purely because there's more volume of it, but anything that would be more attractive by being more expensive would be tagged and would sound an alarm at the exit point if somebody tried to steal it. Just to deal with the representations then, and as I say, the store manager, Rob is here, who can deal with any specific questions you have. But I believe Mr. Elliott's already addressed you in relation to traffic flow, which I would submit is not a relevant submission here. The store, of course, is already open and I hope is trading effectively, whether alcohol is sold or not. There are also concerns very validly raised about potential for underage drinking, vandalism, and the proximity of a secondary school, which I will deal with under the Police Scotland issues that have arisen here. Now, we note, I think there's four instances where the police have been called by the store because of youths hanging around. I've spoken to Mr. Rob about this. He accepts that there are cases where, this being a new store, I suppose it's attractive for youths to hang around and cause an annoyance, but they're actually proactive in calling the police if these issues happen. I'm told there was a group of about 10 members aged 12 to 15 who have been causing vandalism locally, who've been hanging around stores. And the store considers that they have been effective to try and deal with this. So as soon as they see these people, they're barred from the store. It's one specific group. They're barred from the store. They're encouraged to leave. And if they congregate or mess around with the trolleys, for example, outside, then the police are called and they are moved on. We are, B&M will do their best to try and prevent that sort of thing from happening. If these people come into the store, then it's, as I say, it's supervised. There's Challenge 25. We have the tagging for the spirits and the supervision of the aisle in any event. So I think that the issues, I'm not going to say they will completely go away, but I think from my experience, when stores are proactive and clamp down on these sort of issues immediately, then they are resolved. But it's interesting that the issues have arisen when there's no alcohol there anyway. And you may say, well, actually having alcohol is an increased attraction. But of course, because of all the procedures we've got, we feel that that will not be a problem. But they've done the right thing. They've phoned the police. They've tried to deal with it as best they can without having to call the police and involve officers. But where is something that's escalating, they've called the police and it's been resolved in that manner. And I'm sure that if that continues in the future, it will be resolved longer term. So that's the representation on behalf of B&M. As Mr. Elliott's also said, there is no over provision, of course, in Crieff. So I would ask you to consider the promotion of the licensing objectives. We're not saying it's without issues here, but I do think that this store is going to be very successful. It's busy, and we would like to have this ability to have the ancillary alcohol added to the provision in the store. Mr. Sahota, I hope I've covered everything on your behalf there. Is there anything you wanted to add, either you or Mr. Rob, about the presentation?
From myself, thank you again, everybody, for giving us the opportunity to present our case. As Richard has already explained, really appreciate your time. I think, Richard, you covered off everything. I think one of the other things that we do in our stores is we have something called a red route. Now, red route is designed on the basis of high-risk products or anything like electrical and stuff like that. And alcohol is always incorporated within that because we want to have a constant awareness of what's going on within our stores. So when you look at the store layout, you will find that most customers will snake the property. However, the management team will generally walk it as a circuit, so they get a view of it as they're walking, and so do colleagues as well. So I think that was the one thing I'd like to add, is that I believe our processes within our business are fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams and Bob. Can I invite members to ask questions? Any member got any question? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. In your application, you talk about the possibility of delisting alcoholic products that might be problematic in the Crieff area. I'm not sure what the current choice is, but I just wondered if it's something you'd be prepared to speak to the police before, you display alcohol and make sure that any of these products are not on sale from the start, rather than maybe getting a name for having them and then having to remove them. Thank you.
Yes, I'll let Bob answer. That has been a common request. So, for example, if it was Buckfast, which was a problem in an area, then it will be delisted. And what B&M have the ability to do, because we have to do the same whether it's in Scotland or in England, is that, for example, if high strength cider was presenting a problem, then that can be delisted for the store and it's simply not delivered to that store. So I'm sure, Bob, if you want to address that, but you'll be happy to talk to the police before the license became operative.
Yeah, got no issues with that at all. I think that's something that we've done in one of my other stores where we've delisted products that like Alco Pops and stuff like that. And I think that would absolutely, I totally agree with you, Councillor John Duff, that is something that we would absolutely look into before we go into it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, which outlines things very, very greatly. We have a good, clear picture of it. Could you tell me how many staff are employed in the place on a daily basis?
Jake, do you want to take that one?
Morning, thanks very much for your time. At the moment, it varies on a day-to-day basis. In total, we've got 27 staff members at the moment, and on a day-to-day basis, it varies between 5 to 6 staff members in at a time. So they normally go in shift rotas. So you've got your management team that start in the morning, and then you've got your till staff that start at the same time, and then they run until about 12, and then a different shift comes and takes over for them. So normally at one time there's between 5 to 7 staff members in the store at one time.
The reason I ask, I'm thinking in terms of there appears to have been crowds of youth at times being some sort of nuisance to the store and other places, and I'm thinking in terms of the number of staff required to deal with any entrance of a bunch of youths who did create a problem in a hurry, and do you feel capable to cope?
Yeah, absolutely. Close to the start of the time that we opened, we were struggling sort of because we never had the staffing levels. We've been struggling for staff from the start, but we're now in the position that we're fine. We've got the shift patterns correct, so we've got at least 5 to 6 staff members in pretty much at all times from open till close. Maybe at the very start of the day between 7 and 9 is maybe only about 4 to 5, but it's normally about 5 to 6 at least at one time. So yeah, I feel we're capable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parrott.
Thank you very much, convener. And thank you for the very comprehensive presentation from Mr. Williams and others. My question, if you like, is I think perhaps the one area that I haven't heard being covered, and that is, given the proximity of the school, does the training of staff members who are, selling alcohol cover the possibility of individuals buying alcohol for inappropriate onward delivery in terms of, if you like, looking at somebody and seeing if what they're buying is perhaps the sort of thing that they might normally drink, if you see what I mean?
If I just answer that first of all, then, and I don't know if either of you two want to chip in. So the staff training deals with so-called proxy sales, adults purchasing on behalf of children, and advises cashiers how they may decide that. So, for example, if the customer doesn't seem to be associated with the product that's being purchased for whatever reason, then that may be a red flag and they would refuse. I have to say it is and always will be a difficult decision to make from a cashier, but they do this as effectively as they can do, and I think we are conscious that there is a school nearby and that may be an issue, and they will add that to their risk factors on the tills. I don't know, Jake, if you or Bob have anything to add to that.
I think for me, Richard, and thank you, Councillor Parrott, for the question. We've had to do this sort of stuff for quite a long time, because not only do we think about alcohol, but we think about knife sales, we think about nicotine vapes that we sell. So we as a business, we've been all over proxy sales very early on, because we've had to deal with these sort of circumstances in the past. And I think when you look at the training that the guys will get and have got through the Challenge 25 processes, we are very robust on that. And we do take action as well if processes aren't followed. We're very, very rigid on that sort of things, because we want to make sure that when we're selling products, we're selling them in the right way and making sure that things are looked after as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Brock.
Thank you, convener, and thank you for the presentation. It was most welcome. Obviously, I've got to say Councillor Duff and Councillor Gray has already asked some of my questions, but the one that I do want to ask is the issue you're having with the youths, and is there any policy you have in place for how many can come in at a time, like what other stores in the area have done? Is that something that's been considered?
So, Councillor Brock, thank you again for the question. Very valid one once again. So we've not put anything in practice at the moment, because I think at the moment we've been able to deal with the situations, but we're not adverse to doing it as well if we need to. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that all of our customers feel safe within the environment that they're shopping in and get a wonderful journey when looking at our great products that we sell. So we're not adverse to doing it. We would look at the circumstances, take advice from Police Scotland on the back of it as well, because I'm sure we'll build a very solid relationship with them as well. But definitely it's not something that we wouldn't stop doing if we had to do it, if it became to a level that was uncontrollable.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Gray, is this a legacy hand you've still got up, or have you got another question? I just noticed your hand still up, though. We're hoping to use the chat box today. No, that's okay, Councillor Gray. I think I've got a question, because it's been mentioned this morning that there are other stores nearby. I just wondered what the relationship were with the other stores, and if you got together to try and tackle, if there's an awareness that there's some youths nearby about causing trouble, do you alert the neighbouring stores and be a concentrated effort to try and cut down on this?
Thank you.
Yeah,
again,
at the moment. Sorry, Bob.
Carry on, Jake.
At the moment, it's normally I only personally really deal with Aldi, because we're very close to each other and we're on the same street along with the school. So I've got a relationship with the manager there, Jamie, and we're in contact with each other if we ever get a situation where there's school kids loitering about at night time, or if they're in either one of the stores. But as with the other stores within the area, I'm not at the moment with them, but it's normally just Aldi that I've dealt with so far.
Thank you. And my next question is the relationship with the school. Have you been invited to go into the school to talk to the senior pupils, or maybe even the younger pupils as well, about the relationship they could have with the store, and we're all working together?
Well, funny enough, the head teacher at the school was my old head teacher, so I've got a good relationship with him, Mr. John Donnelly. I've got a good relationship with him, as the fact that I was only with him a couple of years ago. So with that, straight away I've got that relationship with him, and we've been in contact with each other, especially from the start. So we've had emails back and forth as with the school kids, but I've not been invited towards the school. But I can always ask a question, and I can see what we can do around that.
Thank you. I think that might be a positive move to work together. So thank you for that. Anyone else got any questions they wish to ask? Don't see anyone. Okay, Mr. Williams, is there anything further you'd like to sum up and add?
No, I think that covers everything. Thank you. And I would just ask the councillors to consider the application favourably. I think B&M's has been shown, is a very responsible operator. And I would ask you to endorse this application and grant them their provisional licence. Hope they can trade in the not too distant future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are now ready to come to a decision. Do we agree to downgrade the application to provisional licence, premises licence and grants subject to mandatory conditions?
Agreed.
Agreed.
And can I ask about any local conditions? Bearing in mind what has been said about young people.
Convener, I think we should apply the our policies in relation to dispersal of patrons and preventing the purchase of alcohol for a child or young person.
I would endorse that.
Irrelevant. Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I think that's. Thank you. So, Deputy Clerk, have you anything else you wish to add?
Just to make clear what you've just granted, it's downgrade to the application to a provisional premises licence. Thereafter, grant subject to mandatory conditions. And I then heard that you've agreed a local condition. I'll read out the terms to Mr. Williams in particular, but it will be confirmed later. I think it's we have fairly standard terms for written policies. Written policies shall be in place for the premises and immediate external area, and shall be implemented by the premises licence holder and all staff involved in the sale and consumption of alcohol, all to the continuing satisfaction of the board for, firstly, I think it's dispersal of patrons, and secondly, preventing the purchase of alcohol by or for a child or young person. Obviously, you've alluded to policies in place already. I will be clarified for Mr. Williams' benefit and Mr. Salter and Mr. Robb. Those policies are drawn up, but it's the licensed standards officer who you liaise with on the terms of those policies, so it doesn't need to come back to the board.
Excellent.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you for your time, councillors, today.
Thank you very much. And
Convener, can I just add a comment? Convener, can I just add a comment? My wee thing's not working here, but could I just add a comment that I want to say, you know, how well the litter, you must have a good litter policy in place, because, you know, your store outside is actually pretty good as we walk along the Broig Road. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for your feedback. It's very well received, Councillor Brock. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank
goodbye.
you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Good luck.
Thank you. Now, I see we've got other people waiting in the wings.
Convener, we still have, sorry to come in here, Convener. I'm just checking. We only appear to have one person waiting in the wings, not two, and I'm expecting two to come in, but I'm sure the other will join very shortly. You have a choice of dealing with some of the non-cited for a minute or two, before we get to our 11 o'clock citations, or we simply just bring in the person and wait for the other person, the lawyer coming in fact. Matter for you, I mean, we certainly could deal with one or two of the non-cited if you want to at the moment.
Okay, we can deal with, we'll do one or two of them.
Yeah. Go to page 29 of your papers, 5.4 on the agenda. It's major variation for Tower Hotel.
Okay, we have, this is a major variation application for Tower Hotel, East High Street, Crieff. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Convener. The applicant has submitted a written representation for today's hearing, and you have a copy of that. That's through the agent. Through the agent. The proposed variation mainly seeks to amend the terminal on sales hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to 12 midnight to reflect the board policy. Secondly, to amend reference to the outdoor area, which is to the rear of the hotel, to allow it to operate up to 11 p.m. and to ascribe a capacity to it of 300 persons. At the moment, it is licensed but doesn't have a separate capacity. And lastly, amend the close down condition for functions to reflect board policy. Now, as you know, previously, and the current local condition is that when a function takes place, there's a close down for 1 hour before the function starts to clear the social demand people out of the way, of course. The amended policy, what they're seeking is the bar being closed for 30 minutes and where the function is going to take place. Only other thing, Convener, is that no objection has been received to this application.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Clerk. Are there any questions from members on this variation?
Not from me.
Questions?
No, I don't see anyone wanting to ask any questions. Deputy Clerk, anything else you wish to add before we come to?
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Okay, so are we happy to agree oh God, this is difficult. Do we agree to vary the premises license, vary the operating plan and vary the local condition as requested?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Right.
Now, I see that the members are both waiting to join us, so it might be just as well to go to that one.
Yes, Convener, we're now at 11 o'clock, so we have our 11 o'clock citations. We'll come back to the non-cited ones later, but we are now on to 7.1 and 7.2 your papers, page 77 and 109. The persons who are about to come in are for appearing for both. It's provisional premises licence applications for St Johnston's Service Station and Strathday Service Station in Perth. Ms Douglas, could you bring in the two persons? I think Convener both are in.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Kathleen Baird, the convener of the Licensing Board, and with me this morning I have got Councillor James, Councillor Brock, Councillor Gray, Councillor Pover, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Reid, Councillor Duff and Councillor Parrott, and the Deputy Clerk, Colin Elliott. So we've got Andrew Fleming, and I don't see the other person. I'm just making sure.
Andrew Hunter.
And Andrew Hunter.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is a provisional premises licence application for St Johnston's Service Station 2 Dunkeld Road, Perth. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Convener. Just to be clear, there are two applications which our guests will be dealing with, but we'll deal with the first one will be St Johnston's Service Station in 2 Dunkeld Road, Perth. If you bear with me. Now, Of course, we have Mr. Andrew Hunter, who is the agent, and Andrew Fleming, who's from the applicants, attending by video conferencing. This is a provisional premises licence application. Delegated powers apply to the confirmation stage, as members know. Powers of the board at the confirmation stage are limited, so members should consider all aspects of the provisional application, including whether or not to impose local conditions. Of course, should add that confirmation is dealt with under delegated powers. Section 50 certificates are in place for building standards, food hygiene and now planning. That's been confirmed. Police Scotland have advised the applicant and connected persons do not have any relevant offences. They've also confirmed there have been no cases, complaints, representations within 1 year concerning antisocial behaviour on the premises or within a 50-metre radius of the premises. In the supplementary information document provided, all policies will be in place except dispersal of patrons. Now, members, you have copies of the proposed location and layout plan provided for your information. No objections have been received. The next bit I'm going to come on into the complicated bit within this and the other application. You're going to have to obviously deal with a test that isn't alcohol related. I'll come on to that. But this is a premises used as a garage or forming part of premises used as a garage, which includes use for sale of petrol, includes use for sale by retail of petrol hors d'oeuvre. The premises are what we call excluded premises, for which no premises licence can have effect, subject to the exception in the Licensing Scotland Act 2005, section 123, subsection 5, and I'm basically quoting here, premises used for the sale by retail of petrol hors d'oeuvre or which form part of premises so used are not excluded premises if persons resident in the locality in which the premises are situated are or are likely to become reliant to a significant extent on the premises as the principal source of A, petrol hors d'oeuvre, or B, groceries, where the premises are or are to be used for the sale by retail of groceries, of course. Now, assuming, maybe that's the test, assuming the applicants accept that the premises are excluded premises, the first consideration for the board is to determine the locality of the premises and then consider whether persons resident in the locality are or are likely to become reliant to a significant extent on the premises as the principal source of A, petrol hors d'oeuvre, or B, groceries. It is a matter for the board to determine what the locality is. Case law indicates that persons resident in the locality is not equivalent to and does not mean the community. It should be interpreted as meaning that there are a number of persons resident in the locality going beyond a de minimis or handful who are reliant. Further, reliant to a significant extent recognises a number of persons in the locality, not necessarily constituted as a group, who as a matter of their purchasing habits see and treat the shop premises in question as the principal source of, from which they may in the ordinary course obtain either groceries or fuel, and who would properly consider themselves materially disadvantaged or inconvenienced were that shop not to provide those retail facilities. Evidence of alternative retail outlets is plainly not excluded, but the existence of some alternative facilities within the locality will not prevent giving a positive answer to the question. Lastly, members, to address the section 123 subsection 5 test, the applicants have provided a customer profiling research report July to October 2021, which you have before you. Convener, I have nothing more to add.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Mr. Hunter, over to you.
Thanks very much, Convener. You've hopefully all taken some paracetamol after that explanation of the statutory provisions. Well done, Mr. Elliott. If I may, Convener, I'll just make a couple of observations in terms of background about the applicant company, because it will apply equally to this application and the next one, and it will save me repeating it. Motor Fuel Group or Limited, it may be a name that's familiar to some of you. They run a large number of petrol filling stations across Scotland, of which around 50 or so are subject to alcohol premises licences. They have one within your board area at present. They are currently responsible for the Pitlochry service station, which is licensed. Members of the board who may have been around at the time that was first licensed may recall it was a company called Malthurst, which is now part of the Motor Fuel Group. And they are coming forward with this application for St Johnstone and the next application for Strathtay. why are these being offered now? The whole suite of premises of motor fuel over the last year or so have been undergoing significant refurbishment as part of the retail shops becoming part of the Londis convenience brand, and as part of that, the applicant decided to advance applications for premises licenses across their estate where they considered it appropriate. So, for example, if there were sites that were located in licensing board over provision areas, which obviously wouldn't include yourselves here, but they've chosen not to pursue applications elsewhere. So that's why the application comes forward, and they've just been going through their estate, and the Perth applications come forth now. In terms of the St Johnston site, I understand this was underwent a significant refurbishment in October of last year. So that's why the research is July to October. So there was some research done in July, and then some further research done once the premises had been renovated. So you heard from Mr. Elliott about the test in relation to section 123 of the legislation. If any of the members of the board sat and they heard the applications for BP for Perth services and BP for bullion fuel back in 2018, if we can remember life before COVID, then these reports are in the same order, same approach as those, and so the style of report may bring back memories. Whether those memories are good or not, I'll leave to you, but you should have some recollection of the form and content at least. Now, the St Johnstone one, if I can take that first, if the members have got it to hand, and I'll pull some of the relevant information from it, and if you've had the opportunity to review it and you've got any more specific questions about it, I'm more than happy to assist once I've drawn the relevant information from it. So the way it works is that the locality that the market researchers take was a distance of 1 mile. So 1 mile from the relevant premises they took to be an appropriate locality for somebody accessing a petrol filling station. That might be a different locality than somebody would assess, for example, over provision of a licensed premises. But for the purposes of a reasonable draw of what they would regard as local residents, it's the market researchers that take the 1 mile. So when it appears on page 5, I don't know whether you've got different page numbers, Mr. Elliott, in terms of the agenda or anything like that, but certainly in the bottom right hand corner of the report, there's some page numbers for the actual report if members hopefully get to see them. But so on page 4 it tells you that the research was done during July and October. It wasn't done every day during that period, I should hasten to add. A total of 607 people were interviewed on the forecourt premises, and the locality of 1 mile is taken. And essentially, if you reside within that 1 mile radius, then you participate in the totality of the market research. If you don't live within that 1 mile, then you're thanked for your time and you fall out of the process. And the report confirms that not everybody is invited to join in the market research, and of course members will know from your own experience of market research that not everybody will choose to participate anyway, because either they don't have time or frankly don't want to. The market research at page 7 gives you some information about the demographics of those who were interviewed. So there were slightly more males to females, about 2 males for every 1 female. A broad range of ages, and you'll see that quite unusual actually for these types of applications. There is quite a high level of customers arriving to the premises by foot rather than by vehicle, and that probably transcends into the information about the high level of grocery use for these premises. Now, as we'll come on to see, the ultimate reliance on the premises is for fuel rather than groceries, but I would simply observe that of these types of applications, which I see, and I see a very large number of them, one doesn't anywhere usually see such high level of grocery use. Anyway, To address the statutory test with which Mr. Elliott has referred to, and hopefully you're all still with me, is on page 8 of the report. So that customers are first of all asked, well, what do you use the premises for? They're then asked, well, is it your principal source? And then they're asked the question set out by the Court of Session, which is, well, if it's your principal source, would you regard yourself as materially inconvenienced or disadvantaged if you couldn't use it? So that those questions are asked across pages 8 and 9. So initially you'll see on page 8 that of the local residents, the 27% of local residents, which is 165 people, almost even Steven, 66%, 69% say they use it for groceries and fuel. When it then comes to the question of, well, is it your principal source? As I would expect to see, the principal source of groceries numbers drops right down, although some still say it's their principal source of groceries. And then the fuel then comes to about just under 50-50 in terms of principal source. So it's then only those people who say, well, it's my principal source, my main source of fuel or groceries, who are then asked, well, okay, if it wasn't available to you, would you regard yourself to be disadvantaged? Because that's what the statutory test requires. So when you start at 165, taking those percentages, you then get down to 59 persons who said it is their principal source of fuel or groceries. They are then asked, well, if this wasn't available to you, what is the reason for that? If it wasn't available to you, would you regard yourself as disadvantaged or inconvenienced? It's exactly 50-50 on the fuel, and then on the groceries, there's obviously a significant more number that say, well, they wouldn't regard themselves as disadvantaged. Bluntly, I don't usually expect to see the groceries get that far in terms of reliance, because most individuals would not use a petrol filling station for their normal weekly shopping. But clearly there is at least a small number that look at St Johnstone that way. And going back to the earlier figures about grocery use of the premises, where the average use was about 2.5 times per week, then there obviously are some individuals who rely on them for that purpose. But taking that statutory question, then you get the bottom line figure in the page 9 of the report is that 27 persons give the relevant level of reliance. And 27 persons as a proportion is 16% of the local residents interviewed, or 4% of everybody interviewed. Those individuals are then asked about alternative facilities to them, and the answers to that are given on page 10, and you'll see that just over 60% say that they would still consider themselves disadvantaged using an alternative. Now, the questions at this point are all structured, and then finally customers are asked, well, why is it you give the answers you give, and some information about why they say that is contained on pages 19 and 20. And you'll see the answers given in relation to this reflect either that the premises are the closest to them, either in terms of where they live or where they work, and the fact that they would have to go further in the event of being unable to access these particular premises. And perhaps not unsurprisingly, there's the element of habit is in there as well, with people saying that they use it all the time. In terms of the bottom line figures for these, so in terms of the 27 and so on, what I can advise the board is that the numbers here are almost identical to the numbers in the market research for Bullionfield back in 2018, which was a premises you accepted as satisfying the statutory test to not be excluded. So if that's of assistance to you, certainly from my submission for the purposes of consistency with a previous decision and acceptance of market research, I would invite you to accept that the premises are not excluded. Beyond that, there are no other adverse comments in relation to the. Oh, there was no adverse comments rather in relation to the application at all. Clearly, they are if they were to be given a license by yourself, they will be perhaps the closest scrutinised licensed premises in Perth, given they're right next to the police station. So they will be in the eye of the storm permanently. But I would certainly say that having acted for Malthurst and motor fuel now for, I think, just over 8 years, I can say with some comfort that whilst I've done our licensing work for that period of time, I've not required to assist them with any matters in relation to, if you like, poor trading or practice. It's only been applications I've required to do, so they've not been subject to a review or anything of that nature in Scotland. I'm pleased to say, and long may that continue, and they'll have the usual diligence you would expect to have in place in terms of CCTV and Challenge 25 and till prompts for alcohol products that are scanned. So I would invite you to grant the application, and of course I'm happy to assist with any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Can I invite members to ask some questions? Anyone got a question for Mr. Hunter? Or are we all baffled by all these figures? Or is it being explained so well that we fully understand it?
I think the latter, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. I hope so. No one got any questions? Fully understand where we're going? No one has got any questions.
Convener, I don't think there's any questions. I don't think there's any questions left to ask, because that was a very thorough explanation by Mr. Hunter, and very welcome, to be honest. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunter, would you therefore like to sum up?
If I could just get a recording of that response from your colleague there, and I can then take that with me as I go about. No, I think I would just be repeating myself, convener, and there'd be no purpose to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, can I ask, do you wish to retire to consider this application?
I'm happy to make a decision in open forum.
Thank you. Does anyone else think differently from Councillor Parrott? No. Very good. Thank you. That just shows how well it's all been explained to us and how we understand exactly what has been going on. So thank you very much for that. So we are now ready to make a decision. I'm happy to grant this application because we all accept the premises are not excluded. Anyone else got anything different to say?
Nothing different, convener, but only to back up what you said. Yeah, I think it is acceptable, and we, as Mr. Hunter pointed out, that a couple of these stations are on the same terms and conditions we've agreed to before. In fact, I was lucky enough to be on both of those actually, so I have no problem with this going forward.
Thank you very much.
Good day.
Councillor Duff.
Convener, if members wish the written policy in relation to the dispersal of patrons to be added as a local condition.
I would agree with that.
Happy to accept that as part of the motion, the conditions. Yeah.
Thank you.
The convener, I don't know if you can see, but Councillor Gray has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gray. I've been looking at the chat box to see if anybody was putting a message in the chat box to wish to speak. Yeah. Councillor Gray. Yeah,
thank you. I tend to agree with what's been said. And I'm looking at page 9 on the middle chart, the bar chart, which shows 71% of groceries. It completely stands to reason that this would be the case, knowing the demographics and the layout of that area, strategically placed very close to housing, with no other major grocery stores nearby. It absolutely fits with the chart, and it fits for that location. I'm quite happy.
Thank you very much. Members, sorry, someone. Is that still your hand up, Councillor? Oh, great, thank you. Kind of lost where we are. I think we have agreed this application with the local condition.
Councillor Wilson has his hand up, Convener.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson, I was looking in the chat box for things, so I don't see whose hand it is. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, Convener, my issue has been dealt with here.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Clerk, have you anything you wish to add?
Just to be clear, members, what you've agreed is it's actually a grant subject to mandatory conditions, because of course those have to go on. And you've agreed a local condition. The longhand version is written policies shall be in place for the premises and immediate external area, and shall be implemented by the premises licence holder and all staff involved in the sale and consumption of alcohol, all to the continuing satisfaction of the board for, and on this occasion it's dispersal of patrons. I think that's agreed unanimously.
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. So
thank you.
We now move on to provisional premises licence application for Strathstay service station. We have Mr. Hunter and Mr. Fleming with us still, so I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application, please.
Thank you, Convener. Members will be glad to know I'm not going to go through exactly the same issues before, because I'm not going to repeat myself, but I will go through the aspects that are site specific here. So excuse me. Again, provisional premises licence application where delegated powers apply at the confirmation stage. We do have section 50 clearance from planning, building standards and food hygiene, and we have nothing from the police either in terms of relevant offences or in terms of antisocial behaviour. Again, supplementary information document, all policies in place except for dispersal of patrons. You do have a copy of the proposed location and layout plan before you. No objections have been received. Now, you'll be glad to hear I won't repeat the test, the section 123 subsection 5 test. I'll just adopt my comments from the previous application. I'm afraid Mr. Hunter's quite right. There was no way of summarising it even quicker than I did. My last comment is, again, you have a customer profiling research report here with your papers, and this time it's June, July 2021. Nothing else to add, Convener.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. Mr. Hunter, it's over to you.
Thanks very much, Convener. I suppose I should just say, before turning to that report, both in relation to the last application and this one, there's no dispersal policy, simply by reason that perhaps through my own error I'd treated that as being an on-sales issue rather than an off-sales issue, but I'm quite happy to liaise with Mr. Elliott's office about ensuring that the appropriate policy is in place, both in relation to the previous application and this one, because I no doubt you'll look to attach that condition to this application if you're minded to grant it. So I would simply say that at the outset. These premises were renovated, as I understand, at the tail end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Again, they operate as the Launders Convenience brand within the petrol filling station. On the basis I was lauded for my previous submission in relation to the market research, I'd probably not go through to the same level of detail as the previous one, but I'm happy to highlight the principal figures to assist. So in relation to this particular site, again, the market researchers took 1 mile. In terms of the number of local residents in respect of this site, there was certainly a significant level of fuel reliance, and remembering this is a fuel or groceries test, but there wasn't groceries reliance, and I think that's probably understandable given the location of these premises proximate to the Tesco supermarket. Nevertheless, what the operators of the site had said to me was, well, we're very busy for fuel, because if you live in on that side of Perth, we are effectively the principal option before you join the M90. So we are very busy for fuel sales with local residents, and that certainly comes across in the market research, and of course is sufficient for the legal test. But just to draw out the figures for you, so in this case, there were a slightly higher number of local residents interviewed, 150. Sorry, similar number of local residents interviewed, 153, but a much higher level who were demonstrating demonstrating that it was their principal source of fuel. So 105 this time, of which just over half indicated that they were they would be inconvenienced to the relevant extent. And when you take that down to the percentage, so the 58 people who indicated their inconvenience, you come up to just under 38% of the local residents who were interviewed. So a far higher percentage than the previous application, and more closely aligned with the results we got in 2018 for the Perth services application, just for interest. And you'll see that the increase in the number of people who indicated the relevant reliance in this report translates into a much longer and more detailed responses from page 19 to 21 as to why those individuals say that they regard themselves as disadvantaged to the relevant extent. So that's why there's much more individuals involved here in the market research, and therefore more detailed answers at the end. So I think, given the location of these premises and the absence of other facilities, for example, unless you were going over to Broxton, which is some distance away for local residents, if they're going down to the M90 junction, I think that a level of reliance here would be expected. And because it's a fuel or groceries test, I would submit that again the test is met, and in the absence of any other comment in relation to the application, I'd invite you to grant it. But again, of course, happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. I see Councillor Wilson, you've got your hand up. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks for the presentation again, Mr. Hunter. Just to get a bit of context into this, we know the numbers, you've briefly narrated them, but what's that as a percentage of the total number of folk who come through the door? I mean, we're talking about fuel here as being the main focus of your argument.
So, in the pure numbers, I can only give you based on the number that were interviewed. So in terms of the total number of people who were interviewed, who disclosed themselves as local residents within that 1 mile, it was 37.9% of them demonstrated the relevant reliance, and it was 6.5% of everybody who was interviewed. So 2.5% more of everybody interviewed per the last application, and about nearly double the level of reliance from the St Johnstone application. But again, it's fuel led rather than both led in the previous application. But as it's an OR test, in my submission, that's sufficient.
Understand the figures in the test, but I'm just trying to get into the context of paired interviews, a selective process to a degree, right?
Well, it's
over a short period of time. I'm just wondering of the total number of people who come through the door, and I'm aware of the Strathday place. It's busy, right? I totally agree with you about that. But as a percentage of the total number, we don't know the answer. You can't give us that figure.
Well, on the contrary, I would be, well, one, it would be an exercise in significant cost to interview everybody, and plus you would never catch everybody. But the market research discloses in the methodology briefly at the start and then in more detail at the back that one of the reasons why, well, aside from the natural attrition of people not wanting to be involved in it, the very reason that not everybody is asked is so that if they were to go back in October or back in November or December to go back this week, the market researchers would predict they would get, with confidence, they would get broadly the same results, and the sampling produces that. So if for example you had, try and make the maths easy for me. So if you knew there was if it's 6.5% of everybody that attends, then you multiply that by the weekly number of customers. And I don't have an exact figure on how many customers you get on average per week, but you're into the thousands in that situation. So you're then taking 6.5% of the thousands that are reliant local customers, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to ask a question? No? Thank you. Mr. Hunter, do you wish to sum up?
Convener, on the basis it would just be repetition, and no thank you. I just invite you to grant the application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Well, we've heard what Mr. Hunter has said and Deputy Clerk has said. So I would agree that these premises, except premises, are not excluded. And would willingly grant this application. Do I have this unanimous decision of the board?
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
So grant subject to the mandatory conditions. And can I ask about any local condition?
Indeed, I would say add the local condition.
The written policies shall be in place for the premises. The immediate external area shall be implemented by the premises licence holder and all staff involved in the sale and consumption of alcohol to the continuing satisfaction of the board for dispersal of patrons. That's the wish of the board.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, have you anything you wish to add?
Nothing, Convener. You summed it up perfectly at the end as to what's been granted.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Mr. Hunter and Mr. Fleming.
Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Right,
Right,
members.
Deputy Clerk, can you
Yep.
please tell us where we're going now?
Yes. Anyway, we still have 3 matters still to deal with. Let's go back to the first one, which is page 35 of your papers. Unorthodox roasters. It's a major variation application.
Trying to find my papers. This is the major variation application for unorthodox roasters, 129 High Street, Kinross. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application?
Thank you, Convener. The applicants wish to participate by way of written representation today, which you have a copy of before you. The proposed variation seeks to add a small off-sales display area and deliveries via online sales to the premises licence. As deliveries are sought, you've heard me say this before in other applications today, policy 5.22 and the delivery of alcohol to and consumption by persons under 18 or drunk persons is therefore relevant, and you've got a copy of policy 5.22. Again, matter for you whether necessary expedient to impose as a local condition on licence if granted. You've got a copy of the proposed layout plan before you, which has to come through in the variation because of the display area being added. And no objections have been received to the application. I have nothing else to add, Convener.
Thank you very much. I think we all remember when this application came, or I can't remember when it was, but it was not too long ago.
About
So
2018 or 2019, Convener. It's about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. Councillor Wilson, you have a question.
It's partly a question and partly to help move us on expeditiously, Convener, but yes, I remember well when we had this initial application, and this is a business that really has taken off, and it's quite a destination for Kinross for there, and I see this as a reasonable way of expanding their business, and can't see any reason why we should do nothing else but grant it, to be quite honest. But I'm supportive of this type of development because I think it's sweating the asset of tourism in Perth and Kinross.
Okay, I've got no issue with this application either.
I would be supportive of Willie Wilson's comments.
Thank you. Deputy, no one got anything else to say? So we are ready. We would agree to vary the operating plan and the layout plan, and I would imagine we would put on the delivery policy as a local condition.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you,
Deputy
Convener.
Clerk.
Next one is the one after, a premises license application, PGA Halfway House, Glen Eagles Hotel, Glen Eagles. Page 65 of your papers.
So this is the premises license application for the PGA Halfway House, the Glen Eagles Hotel. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application?
Thank you, Convener. Again, applicant submitted a written representation which you have before you. This is an application for a full premises license. Premises are a unit within the PGA golf course at Glen Eagles. Section 50 certificates are in place for planning, building standards and food hygiene. Police Scotland have advised that there are no relevant offences for the applicant or connected persons. They've also confirmed no antisocial behaviour reports, complaints, etc. on the premises within a 50-metre radius of the premises within the last year. In the supplementary information document, it does say that children's facilities are to be in place except electrical socket covers and safety film on glass doors. They were the exception. However, I've had it subsequently clarified that socket covers will now be covered and all glass is to BS standard. Now, proposed location and layout plans are in papers. In the layout plan, the outdoor area to be licensed is not immediately apparent. It's the porch area to the front of the unit, which is the bottom of the layout plan. The premises have operated on occasional licence in 2020 and no objections have been received. I've nothing else to add, Convener.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Deputy Clerk?
No.
No. Okay. I'm happy to grant, subject to mandatory conditions.
Happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed.
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 Okay.
Thank you, members. We have one more to deal with. It's very end of your papers, your last application, 7.3 in the agenda, page 141, provisional premises license application for Rossi on the Erne.
Okay, thank you. This is the premises license. Sorry, I'm the wrong page. This provisional premises license application for Rossi on the Erne for Glendenny. Can I ask the Deputy Clerk to introduce the application?
Thank you, Convener. Again, the participation is by way of written representation, which you have before you. This is a provisional premises license application for a new wedding, private function, private dining and market space venue. My understanding is that they intend to open the venue in April this year. As you know, delegated powers apply to the confirmation stage, but you consider all aspects at the moment on the provisional. Section 50 certificates in place for planning and food hygiene. Section 50 certificate is not in place for building standards, and they've commented that the building warrant's been approved, but completion certificate has not been submitted. Of course, we only need planning permission, our planning section 50 certificate to grant a provisional. Perhaps it's understandable there is no building standards clearance at the moment because it is being constructed at the moment. Police Scotland have said the applicant does not have any relevant offences. They've also not reported any antisocial behaviour. Now, with function and festive function hours being sought, the mandatory late opening condition for a first aider to be present after 11 AM applies. Not all of them, not all six, just the first aider condition. The applicant has, in addition to supplementary information documents, submitted an objective statement, vulnerability policy or drugs policy, and there's also a noise management plan which was required under the planning permission for the premises. You've also got a copy of the proposed location and layout plan. And lastly, Convener, no objections have been received to the application.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. Councillor Wilson, you have a question.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I mean, this is maybe where planning starts to interface with licensing, but I'll try to sift them out, Convener. Given the map we've got of the location, and this is between the railway line and the village, I think you'll be familiar, Convener,
Yes,
with that.
that's correct.
How far away is the nearest occupied domestic residence? Do we know?
Well, it's quite a bit. It's not next door.
I can only talk from memory, Councillor Wilson, and I may be wrong on this, but I seem to recollect seeing that it's at least 250 metres, but I could be wrong on that. There is some distance. Of course, you have that's unconnected, I should say, because you have the farm itself in the immediate vicinity.
Yeah.
But other residences, it's quite some distance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other member got any question? I mean, we've got a very detailed submission here, so I mean, all the information, I think all the questions we might have had to ask have been answered in the submission, so it makes life a lot easier when we have all the information in front of us.
Convener, if I could just ask, sorry,
Yeah.
come on.
Yes, Councillor Duff.
One question. In relation to the noise management plan, it talks about each event having a nominated noise management officer present. If we grant this, is that a condition of that event? Is that correct? Part of the noise management plan.
Councillor Duff, the reply to what I would say on that is the noise management plan is one that was submitted to the Development Management Service. It was part of the conditions of the planning permission and has been approved for that. So yes, that is part of the planning side.
Yes.
But it's not been suggested that that be included in the alcohol licensing side. It will be there.
Yeah.
The protections you have within the noise side is it's specifically stated in the proposed operating plan that, of course, the outdoor area, if I find it, no live amplified music outside from 1900 hours, and all live and amplified music shall cease at the end of function or 1:30 hours, whichever is the earlier. So to be clear on that in terms of noise, inside functions going to finish at 1:30 at the latest. Outside, there's not going to be music after 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. If it's a condition, it doesn't matter whether it's planning or licensing. I think it's
it is there in planning terms for the officer. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other member wishing to ask a question. So we are ready to come to a decision. Do we agree to grant the application subject to mandatory conditions, including the first aid late opening condition?
Agreed.
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 Take it that is a unanimous decision by the board. Thank you.
Agreed.
Deputy Clerk, is there anything else you wish to add?
Nothing, Convener. That's quite clear what was granted, and that ends the meeting.
So thank you very much, members, and thank you very much, Deputy Clerk, for your attendance this morning, and to Shona Douglas for doing everything in the background to make sure everyone got in. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks,
Well
Convener.
done.
Thank you.